ranks of the British soldiers who lost their lives in the Anglo-Egyptian campaign on the Sudan between 1884 and 1885. In this Anglo-Egyptian campaign was led by Lord Kitchener, and one of the officers of the cavalry who was participating in this campaign on his own expense was Sir Winston Churchill. And he was participating on his own expense because, well, Lord Kitchener did not like his father, Lord Churchill Senior, and he thought of him as an incompetent person without realizing that one day this man will be the Prime Minister of this huge empire that have no sunset. And this man was going to be very shortly one of the most active MPs in Britain. Actually, what had happened was that when Britain had occupied Egypt in 1882, lots of people think that this was because of the Suez Canal, to link between, or to have an easy link or an easy access to the pearl of the British Empire, which was India. Actually, this was not true. The true reason, because already Britain has owned 130,000 shares in the Suez Canal Company. That was like 40%. But the main reason behind that occupation was the Egyptian property in Africa. At that time, all of the Sudan was part of the property of the Egyptian crown. And I don't mean the Sudan Republic. All the area south of Nubia was the Sudan. All the way till where? Till Lake Victoria in Uganda. Uganda was part of the Egyptian crown. The Sudan was part of the Egyptian crown. Parts of Kenya and Tanzania. All the Nile area was part of the Egyptian crown. Khedive Ismail had appointed a British governor. His name was Gordon, who was given the title of a Pasha, and he became Gordon Pasha, or Lord Gordon. And even he employed an Austrian to be as the governor of Kordofan, and a Belgian who was the governor of Darfur in those days, which were part of the Sudan, but not all of the Sudan. And there was a religious revolution that took place in the Sudan, and when at the time of that revolution, the Egyptian army had to evacuate the Sudan to defend Egypt as soon as the British fleet had started bombing Alexandria and the invasion started. Actually, this had given the chance to the revolutionaries to take over the Sudan and assassinate Lord Gordon. Of course, Egypt as a country under occupation, being a protectorate, we had no other alternative but to accept the Anglo-Egyptian Treaty of ruling the Sudan, joined with Britain, and according to that, Britain and Egypt had arranged a joint campaign led by Lord Kitchener to bring back the Sudan to be part of the common rule of Britain and Egypt. And these are the names of and the ranks of the soldiers and officers of the British Heavy Camel Regiment that lost their lives in the Sudan. They were either killed in action or lost their lives because of the disease, dysentery. On their way back to Cairo, they had left this graffiti over here, and the Egyptian army with a small British garrison, they were in the Sudan. And of course, the British garrison at that time, for the first time in history, they did what we call the McMahon line. General McMahon said that the south of Sudan is non-related to the north of Sudan, and they should be both split. That's when, for the first time, they started talking about splitting north and south of Sudan. The south is African, the north is Arabic, so they shouldn't be one country, and they did that imaginary line. So the problems of the south of Sudan had started by the British, divide and conquer, in the 19th century. Over here, this staircase, this is the Nilometer. This is a way to measure how high the water of the flood is. As a matter of fact, the ancient Egyptians had so many Nilometers, and the date of the first Nilometer dates back to the first dynasty, almost 3,000 years BC. Here we're very close to the south, where the river comes from or originates from. So this is one of the very first areas in Egypt that receives the water of the Nile during the flood season. So depending on how many steps it covers, they would know if it's a high or a medium or a low flood. Based on previous readings, of course, and previous experience, they would know how, if it covers how many steps, then they are safe. Actually, why was this important? To understand why was this important, you have to understand how the Egyptians cultivated their land. The water of the river used to flood, covering the whole agricultural area. Then, after the flood season was over, the water drops, and then the farmers, they spread the seeds in the fields, leaving the seeds to grow on the humidity retained in the soil from the flood season. So, if the soil haven't been covered with the water of the flood, at a certain point during the flood season, then it will stay dry. It will have no humidity retained in it. It won't be cultivated. That's, by the way, how the taxes were estimated. The full tax was not paid unless the flood was average or above average. If the flood was below average, the tax was less, and sometimes they were exempted from paying the tax because of the low flood, which is a very fair system, thinking that it was thousands of years ago. At least it's better than our present taxation system.
Yeah.